Let's go. Aimbots and Headshots.
Well, hello, welcome in. This is your host, Shotgun, as always. How you guys doing? I've been under the weather for a while. That's why I missed last week's podcast, but bear with me. I'll try to get through this one. I wanted to do a podcast on the 80s. Now, I'm going to date myself here. I'm talking 79 to 89, the whole 10 years of 80s. You know, I was a kid in the 80s, and I think today's kids just don't have what it takes to grow up in the 80s. I'm not trying to put anybody down or, make fun of anybody, but the 80s to me was a great time. You just start off with like family in the 80s, you went to school and you had your mom and dad and your brothers and sisters, and then you would just play your heart out after school. And what was the rule? Be home before the streetlights came on. That was the rule. We didn't have cell phones. If you were going to be at a friend's house eating dinner, you had to pick up an old rotary phone and dial your home and tell your parents, hey, I'm eating over at little Johnny's house or whatever, It was a different time. I think me growing up in the 80s, I was a young kid, and I would never change that for anything. You take the movies, you take the stores that don't exist anymore, or the food places that don't exist anymore, or just food in general that doesn't exist anymore. It's such a crazy time. And I'm so excited or blessed or whatever the word is that I got to grow up in the 80s. I mean, I go back to the neighborhood, you had neighborhood friends, and what you did, you played outside all the time. You weren't, glued to a entertainment device other than the TV. That's what we had. And even then it was selective, because TV turned off at like midnight when you were a kid. It would do a countdown and then play I don't know what it was, taps or something, and then it would just shut off and you would have snow for the rest of the night until 6 in the morning. It was some crazy times, We didn't have devices 24/7 in our face, And, neighborhood kids, we'd just play our heart out all day long. And, and even the neighborhood adults were your parents, when you were naughty and you threw a ball and hit a window, they would be your parents, I'm going to call your mom. And it wasn't like, hey, you stupid kid, get off my lawn. I mean, they had those type of people, but everybody knew who you were. You threw a little ball and hit a window and, hey, Johnny, I'm calling your mom, It's like, whoa, what the hell, Anyway, I don't know where I'm going with this. My brain is just going to fly in every direction, because when I think of the 80s, I could think of so much stuff, I think about TV. As a kid, TV, I remember when the Saturday morning cartoons, the new ones for the year were coming out. It was like Friday night, I don't know when, maybe in the summertime, and they would, show what the new cartoons for this year are going to be, and it would be this program, and it would give you highlights of all the new cartoons for Saturday. I remember that stuff. They had the, Ghostbusters cartoon, and they had, if you back up a little bit, they even had what they called Sid and Marty Krofft. If some of you guys don't know what that is, Google it. I know you guys got these devices now. Sid and Marty Krofft did stuff like HR Puffin stuff, and another one called Lidsville, where everybody was a hat, and I mean, there was the Bugaloos and Speed Buggy and Dr. Shrink, and I mean, it was just a great time to be alive. I mean, they were so cheesy. If I try to watch that stuff now, I think, what the heck did I like in this stuff, And then, you take department stores that aren't around anymore. I mean, we had one called the Treasury, which was like Target, and we had Montgomery Ward's, and we had Woolworths, and Robinsons, and May Company, and Mervyn's. Some of you might know Mervyn's. It turned into Kohl's. If you go into Kohl's, that's basically Mervyn's. I grew up in Orange County, so like we had like the city shopping center, which was in Orange, and it was an indoor mall. Now, if you live in Orange County, I think it's called The Block. They tore it down and made it outdoor mall. But that was the city shopping center. There was a movie theater in Orange called the Cinedome. It was like one of the best movie theaters in the world. You went and saw the big movies there, like Batman and, things like that. And man, it was just fun times. You think about, commercials like Where's the Beef for Wendy's, and I can't really think of commercials right now. There's tons of them, and the toys like Star Wars, and there was like choking hazards and I don't know, lead paint on toys and stuff. You just didn't have the stuff we had today. It's just crazy. I was a huge Star Wars fan, and I had all my Star Wars toys. I still have them today. It's just, the toys were out of control. We had like a 12-foot Aliens figure where his jaw came out. I still have that today, by the way. And, it came out, and I remember my mom saying, I'm not buying that for you. It's too scary. And, toys were great back then, man. And I'm just so glad that I lived through the 80s, and I could ramble and go on. Maybe I'll do another podcast where I actually think it through and write down some things of like commercials and movies. Oh, speaking of movies, here we go. We had Back to the Future, Gremlins, Adventures in Babysitting, Ghostbusters, Star Wars, Batman. I mean, you name it. The movies in the 80s, it's like one hit after another. The Breakfast Club, St. Elmo's Fire. It was boom, 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 boom. Every movie was a hit. E.T., you name it, man. It was great. Terminator, RoboCop, man, they were just great movies, I wish somehow we could just go back to the 80s and look at that stuff. I know some of you are probably rolling your eyes like, oh, that's boring or whatever. I mean, even the hair and the dress and the makeup and the big hair and the loop earrings and the bangles and, kids in high school with the ripped up jeans and the denim and the parachute pants and members only jackets. I mean, I could go on for hours on this stuff. I'm just so glad I grew up in the 80s, and it's a part of my life. Music was just intense. Duran Duran, Motley Crue, Judas Priest, Ozzy, Iron Maiden, Metallica, you name it. 80s was just a frickin' fun time. If you're there with me, man, comment your favorite stuff, movies, music, whatever. Maybe I should come back to this and really dig deep into this, like do a movie and music section or whatever. But I really enjoyed the 80s, and if you're there with me, man, I hope you enjoyed it too. And like I said, I could just ramble on and on, but I won't. Anyway, until next time, take care. We'll talk to you later.